Hey guys, we are back updating the power rankings for the Traitors US Season 2 following Week 5 or Episode 7. And this was definitely a weird episode in the sense that it was a non-elim, and considering that only one person went home last week and the week before we had someone enter the game, I feel like this entire stretch of the season has been kind of slow in the sense that few people have been going home, and with there only being 4 episodes left, it makes me feel like the end game's going to feel a little hectic and a little fast-paced, but that's just the Traitors for you. But with all that out of the way, we have 12 people to talk about, and let's waste any more time. Let's get right into the video. So starting off at number 12, the person I believe is the least likely to win from this point on is Kevin, the same person I've had at the bottom in the last few weeks. And I feel like a lot of the negatives I've said about Kevin's edit up to this point still apply. However, I feel like now it's even more apparent considering that he is part of this alliance with Peter. And I feel like with the way that this alliance has been presented, them being this cliquish, villainous sort of group, I feel like it only looks bad on Kevin's part that he is part of that group. And I feel like a lot of his content around the show is surrounded by him working with Peter and with him being part of this group. So I feel like mixing all that in, I feel like it's very unlikely that he's going to win the game based off his association with the Alliance, and I feel like with his negative content outside of that, I do have him here at number 12. Now moving on to number 11, and we kind of have a similar person, and here we have John Burkow. And John is obviously in a very similar boat to Kevin, where it seems like his main role in the show is to be part of the Peter's Pals Alliance, again, a group that is openly excluding people that are not in the Alliance. And I feel like it's an alliance that is clearly being pitted against the rest of the house. So I feel like that makes it so that John doesn't look very good here. And I feel like with him not really having anything else outside of that, I feel like it's making it very unlikely that he's going to win by the end of it. So because of that, I do have him here at number 11. Now moving on to number 10, and we have someone not part of this alliance, but someone who is still in quite a bit of danger going home here. And here we have MJ. And obviously the main worry with MJ is she is in a lot of danger of being murdered here tonight, where she along with Trishelle are the main options to be taken out. And I feel like MJ's edit up to this point has been a lot more subdued compared to Trishelle's. I feel like it's been a lot less consistent. And I feel like if Parvati wanted to take some sus away from her due to her open opposition to Peter's alliance, I feel like it would make a lot of sense for her to take out MJ here as a way of deflecting the blame here. Now, I know some people disagree with this, and to be fair, considering how open it is that Parvati is a traitor at this point, even by people that she is supposedly working with, I feel like there is a chance that MJ could stay here and that Parvati just pulls the trigger and takes out one of Peter's pals anyway. But I feel like even outside of that, even if MJ were to survive here, I feel like her edit up to this point has been incredibly inconsistent, and I feel like the stuff that we have gotten hasn't been entirely positive here, where even in this last episode, she's talked about how much it hurts that she wasn't picked to be saved during the safety chain, and I feel like there is enough setup there for her to eventually be taken out regardless, and even if she does survive, I just don't see how she gets it to the end. So because of that, she is here at number 10. Now moving on to number 9, and we have another person who I've had pretty consistently low in these rankings, and here we have Kate. And again, Kate's not really on the show that much, where her only confessional comes where she says that she thinks that she could be going home. And in general, there's just not much to Kate. She's not really factoring into the game at all, really. And even beyond that, she's kind of a non-factor on the show. I feel like my opinion on her hasn't really changed after this episode. I feel like the main reason she moved up was due to other people moving down, due to there being more blatant holes in their games or in their edits. So because of that, I do have Kate here, number 9. Now moving on to number 8, and we have definitely one of the bigger players to talk about here, and here we have Peter. And again, I feel like Peter's game up to this point has been one where he's very out in front, where I feel like from a pure game standpoint, the fact that he is the figurehead of this alliance that is excluding the rest of the house is pretty bad. The fact that he's telling people to get out of the room while they're having their meeting, it just paints a much bigger target on his back moving forward. Obviously, Parvati's already coming after him, and while he does turn down the offer of being a traitor, I feel like he's still going to be a pretty massive target in the future, not only due to him just being out in front and trying to figure out who the traitors are, but also with the way that he's managing his own alliance in terms of the rest of the faithfuls. So I feel like to that end, I feel like it's looking pretty bad on Peter's end here. Now, yes, he does get saved due to the safety chain in a spot where he could have been taken out had that not taken place. But even outside of that, I still feel like he's a pretty unlikely winner. I feel like him being the head of this villainous sort of alliance just makes it unlikely that he's going to come out on top at the end, where he'll either be taken out by Parvati, or even if he gets his way in taking out Parvati, I feel like he's just going to be such a massive threat down the road that it's unlikely that he wins. So because of that, he is here at number 8. Now moving on to number 7, and we have someone who I have dipped on in recent weeks, and obviously they're now down here. But number 7, we do have Sheree. And I feel like Sheree's edit has kind of been going downhill for me in recent episodes, where literally in this episode, we see her deciding to save Phaedra because she thinks Phaedra is a faithful and that she shouldn't be targeted because of the shows that they were on, which is obviously a pretty bad read. It's obviously an incorrect read. So obviously, I don't think it's great that she's shown being in the wrong there. And with that literally being her only content across this episode, and with her last couple of episodes also not being that great, I did decide to drop Sheree further on this list to where I feel like she's also not super likely to win by the end of it. But again, I feel like compared to the others, I feel like she at least has more legs to stand on in terms of her maybe getting to the end and losing. But I feel like with the way things are going, I just don't think she's winning at this point. So because of that, I do have her here at number 7. Now moving on to number 6, and we are finally at our first traitor on the list. And here we have Parvati. And I'm still very conflicted on Parvati's trajectory in the game. Now, I will say that her prospects of winning have gone down in this last episode, to where even people like Sandra, who are with her and targeting Peter, are starting to come around to seeing Peter as a faithful. And I feel like the fact that Parvati has been so open about targeting Peter as well isn't really helping her case at this point. And obviously, with Peter being on her back, I feel like it's just going to be a major distraction for her down the road. Now, obviously, this is a different approach to what Dan did, where obviously Dan was a bit too quiet. I feel like with Parvati being so out in front and targeting Peter and really getting people to turn on her that way, I still feel like it's not going to work out well in the long term. Where even if she gets out Peter, I feel like she's still going to be a massive target in the future, as she literally remained a big target after Dan went out. And obviously with her wanting to recruit Peter, that backfiring, and now she's on the fence about murdering Trishelle, who's obviously part of Peter's alliance. I feel like with the way that she's drawing a line in the sand, and with people like Sandra coming around to maybe thinking that Peter is a faithful, I think it's just not looking that great for Parvati at this point. But again, at the same time, I feel like with Peter being set up as a pretty big villain for the season, and with the way that his alliance is going about their business, I still feel like in a lot of ways, Parvati will get her way in the long run in terms of Peter's group not winning the game, but it's just a question of whether that'll come at her expense or not. And at this point, I am probably lower on her than I was last week, where I feel like at this point, the probability of her being the next boot feels a lot higher than what it was before. But again, I still feel like she's probably being set up more on the right compared to Peter, which was enough to give her the edge from me. So because of that, I have her here at number 6. Now moving on to number 5, and this person has continued to slide from where they were before. But number 5, we do have Bergie. And I feel like as time goes on, I'm starting to not feel that great about Bergie at this point, where I feel like due to his connection with the Peters alliance, I feel like it's just kind of leaving a bad taste in my mouth when it comes to Bergie, where he's contributing to the clickiness of it all, and it's just not a great look in my eyes. But I still think he is probably one of the more likely winners of this group. I feel like he still has plenty of setup to get towards the end at some point. It's just a question of whether he's truly being set up to be a winner, or whether he's being set up to be taken down along with the rest of his alliance. Again, I still feel like he is probably one of the more likely people there to pull it out. But with his connection to that group, and with that group getting an increasingly negative edit, I feel like I do have to drop Bergie to a degree here, which is why he's here at number 5. Now moving on to number 4, and I'm a little surprised this person is this high. However, I feel like with the contenders dwindling down, I feel like I kind of have to have this person at where they are, and here we have Sandra. And again, I feel like Sandra got some pretty good content here, where obviously she is one of the people pointing out just how clicky this Peters alliance is, and obviously she is one of the people leading the charge to take out that alliance, but obviously it's thwarted by the safety chain. But at the same time, she's also starting to question whether Peter is a faithful or not, which obviously might steer her away from that. So again, I feel like that's at least a good sign for Sandra that she could have her head in the right direction, where obviously Peter is not a traitor, and obviously Sandra picking up on that could be a positive for her edit in the sense that she's becoming more observant. Again, I feel like the top three is going to be tough competition. But I feel like Sandra definitely has some upside to enter winner contention for me at this point, which is why she's here at number 4. Now moving on to number 3, and we have another person who I have dropped from last week, and here we have Phaedra, the highest ranked traitor left on the board. And again, at this point in the season, I am starting to lean towards this being a faithful win, as I feel like both traitors at this point have some holes within them. Where obviously Phaedra's main hole is the fact that Trishelle is onto her. And I don't think Phaedra fully recognizes that yet, where even though she does kind of oppose Trishelle due to her connection with Peter, I feel like she hasn't picked up on the fact that Trishelle suspects her of being a traitor. And I feel like with the content that Trishelle has gotten, it does make me worried that Trishelle will eventually figure out Phaedra and be able to take her out around the end, which obviously is pretty bad. And beyond that, I do still think she's pretty passive in the game, where obviously she's commenting on how Parvati is screwing up and that Parvati is making herself a bigger target. And yes, while Phaedra herself isn't as big of a target compared to Parvati, I feel like the fact that Phaedra is just allowing these bigger players to make these moves and to get the traitors in trouble is probably not the best sign in my eyes. And yes, while we do see some positives like Sheree saying that Phaedra is so faithful and that she obviously saves her during the safety chain, again, I feel like there are enough worry signs for me in terms of Phaedra's possibility of winning that I did have to drop her to number 3. Now moving on to number 2, and obviously the top 2 are both faithfuls, and I am a little surprised by the order here, as obviously this person was number 1 last week, but I feel like to be more consistent with my logic from this week's ranking, I did have to drop this person here. But number 2, we do have Trishelle. And I feel like the main reason I had to drop Trishelle is she is part of this alliance that I have said is a villainous group. And I do think she is being harmed by that association, not only edit-wise, but within the actual game, where obviously Parvati is very much considering taking Trishelle out as a way of weakening that alliance coming to the next round. And considering how open Parvati has been about targeting Peter, even knowing that Peter is already targeting her, I feel like Parvati may actually pull the trigger here and take out Trishelle, which would obviously make this ranking kind of ridiculous. But I think the main thing saving Trishelle in this ranking is her relationship with CT, which has allowed her to kind of stand out from the rest of the crowd. Where obviously it's a key storyline throughout the season, where early on, we saw Trishelle and CT wanting to mend their relationship. We got that random scene after one of the episodes where she talks about mending things with CT. And then obviously in this latest episode, we saw that relationship being tested, where obviously CT doesn't save Trishelle during the safety chain, and we get so much focus on her taking that to heart, and obviously it is a big thing that happens here. So I feel like it is kind of a big storyline throughout the season. Now, yes, on some level, it could end, obviously, with Trishelle being murdered, but I also feel like you have to factor in that Trishelle is on to Phaedra, and that she knows that Phaedra could be a traitor. I feel like Trishelle has a lot going on in her edit beyond just her association with Peter's alliance, to where I feel like there is a chance that she could break out of that and sort of elude some of the things I talked about with the other members. So I feel like that's a big reason why I have Trishelle as high as she is at this point. But the main reason I don't have her higher at number 1 is there is still a chance she could go home this week, which obviously would be a pretty bad sign. And obviously beyond that, her relationship to that alliance can't be fully ignored, to where I have her here at number 2. And now, at number 1, the person I believe is the most likely to win the Traitors US Season 2 at this point is CT. And I kinda can't believe CT is number 1 here on this ranking, as I feel like CT's edit for a lot of the season has not been the most consistent. I feel like there have definitely been some lulls across his edit, and you can definitely argue that Trishelle's had a more well-rounded edit compared to CT, and I feel like we've gotten more of her perspective compared to CT. But I still feel like that storyline of CT and Trishelle's relationship carries over to CT, and the way that he talks about his decision in the episode is game focused, where Trishelle is obviously focused on the personal aspect to it, and that CT hurt her, while CT is painting it more as a game decision that he wanted to have John around to remain good with the faithfuls. So I feel like the framing of that definitely helps CT to a degree. I also feel like that with the amount of focus that this relationship has gotten, that one of them is pretty bound to get towards the end. Now, whether it is CT, Trishelle, or both even, we'll have to see. But I feel like that also elevates CT on this ranking. And also the short-term prospects as well, where obviously CT is not in danger of going home while Trishelle is. So I feel like those things were enough to elevate CT into winner contention for me. And I feel like with the short-term safety of CT compared to Trishelle, I did decide to leave him here at number 1. And there we go. That will do it for this week's video. If you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe. Really helps out with the channel. Now I'll be back again next week to update the power rankings again, so you can look forward to that. I'm covering other shows such as Australian Survivor, along with other shows that are coming out relatively soon, so you can expect weekly power rankings of those shows. I am on Patreon, so if you want to consider supporting the channel, you can do so by clicking the link in the description, and you can also join the Discord server by also clicking the link in the description. There's a lot of stuff coming your way, but for now, that is the video. See ya.